Okay, today I'm here to talk to you about how to light and cut your cigar. First thing first, there are three kinds of cutters: a guillotine cutter, a V cutter, and a punch. Let's start with the guillotine. This is a Cigar guillotine. This is a side cutter. These are a couple of different kinds that are brand specific. And one of my favorites is this one. It's a little bit curved, and I don't know why that's so helpful, but it is. Lots of different kinds. This one I haven't seen much of lately, but this one's real nice because it limits the amount of the cap that's removed. So you can only push the cigar in so far, and it's a stop. And when you clip it, it takes off just what you want. The next kind is a V cutter. And the V cutter is handy because it actually, and I don't know if you can see that V, but it cuts a V in the end. So instead of the flat cut, you have a V cut out of the cap of the cigar. And finally, we have the punches. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of punches. This is a big punch. This is for a pretty good sized cigar. This is a much smaller punch, and that's actually the punch right there. So the punch here is pretty small. And here's another punch. And lastly, this little plastic punch is a little bigger. The size of the punch does make a difference. You want to match up the size of the punch with the size of the cigar so that a fair amount of the diameter is removed. If the hole is too small, your draw is going to be too tight and it's going to be uncomfortable. So you want, if it's a large cigar, you want a big punch. If it's a more petite cigar, like these Coronas, then this one's probably totally adequate. And the big one would be, well, it could probably work, but you want to be careful not to spoil your cap. If you spoil your cap and it comes off, then your cigar will start to unravel and you'll have bits of cigar wrapper in your mouth, which is not very pleasant. So those are the three types of cutters. You want to match them up to your cigar. Now, even more than that, when you're selecting the type of cutter, you can use all three pretty much on this cigar. However, the punch is going to work better because of the flat nature of the cap. If you have a flat cap, now this cap is very flat on this cigar, and it's going to be difficult to get exactly the right amount here, and I'm not sure you're going to get it because it's simply too flat. I might be willing to try it with this one, but if you do it freehand, I'm just thinking you probably aren't going to get it. Whereas if you use a punch on this one, you're going to be pretty safe in not destroying the cap. And like I said, it's important not to ruin that cap. By the way, I don't know if you noticed when I pulled this cigar out of the wrapper, the very yellowed cellophane, that's actually a very nice thing. That's something that means the cigar is pretty well aged. This one is a special selection, and I bought this because it was 10 years in their aging room, in addition to whatever the cigar maker aged it for. So that's good. So that's a point of interest. Yellow wrappers, good thing. Yellow wrappers, good thing. Now, when you have a torpedo, a bellicoso, or a perfecto, which means it has a pointy end, if it has a pointy end, a punch isn't going to work. You're going to need to use a guillotine or a V-cut. The guillotine probably works best on these. You just put it in and select the right size. Now, how big of a cut, how far do you cut? You want to open up enough so that the draw is easy and smooth. If you cut it too small, during the smoking of the cigar, the tars will build up in the tip of the cigar, and it will not taste good. It'll ruin the cigar. That said, take your cutter and cut it further up, and you'll actually take away a lot of that buildup. So you can always do another cut. Don't think that once you've made your cut, you're locked into it. And many times, if it's too difficult to draw, you'll make another cut further up to try and open it up. That usually works. So, as you can see, cutting isn't a particularly simple thing. It's not difficult. Most of the time, it's pretty easy. But all of these you're going to want to use with a guillotine cutter, and that will work rather nicely. The V-cut, and I'm going to go ahead and use this one to light this morning. So I'll V-cut this one to show you what the V-cut does. This is a Cigar V-cutter, and you want to cut this pretty decisively. You don't want to fool around. When you put it in there, you put the nose in and cut it. Now, that is a pretty small cut. That may not be enough, really, to get a good draw. So let me check this out. Actually, that's fine. That's a good draw. This is a well-constructed cigar. That's going to work fine for me. Okay, so let's move on to lighting. Here again, frequently they'll offer to light it for you in the cigar shops, and that's not something to be ignored. When they offer to light them for you, don't let them encourage you to put it in your mouth to light it. I'm a strong advocate of something I was told many years ago, and that is the first puff is often the best puff. So what I'm saying is, when you get your cigar, rather than put it in your mouth and try and light it, warm it up in your flame, roast it a little bit, get it going till it becomes kind of orangey. Now that's a good tasting cigar. First puff. Now that's a 5 Vegas Gold. That's a fairly good cigar. But lighting it up this way significantly improves your first puff. And I like that first puff. I want that first puff to be good. The other thing is too, is so many times I see in cigar shops, people putting the cigar in their mouth, and I'm going to pop a photograph up here. What you don't realize is how much of a flame that generates when you draw in and puff out with the cigar lighter on your cigar. Now, the other mention I'm going to make is that when you do that, this is butane. I'm sorry, I don't want to be puffing butane in my lungs. So I'm going to try and light it outside of my mouth first. Now, what I have found is that frequently they'll when they light them up, they'll be a little stingy with the lighter fluid, and I find myself wondering why, but they'll kind of light it and ask you to take a puff. Well, okay, take a puff, and then they'll relight the amount of the foot, the part that they're lighting, that isn't totally lit. They'll make sure the entire foot's lit. But I much prefer to get it going well and then take the first puff. Now, this one happens to be 3. This little Cigar is just 1. These are both just 1. I happen to like the 3 because the way I light the cigar is I light the whole foot first. If you If you don't want to do that, then these certainly will work. As a matter of fact, even if you do want to do that, these will work too. They just take a little longer to light the entire foot. But I would highly recommend you get that entire foot lit. Let's move on to while you're smoking the cigar. While you're smoking the cigar, you happen to notice that one side of the cigar is burning much more quickly than the other side of the cigar. You want to put the part that isn't burning on the bottom. Now, I know this is counterintuitive. You'd think the heat goes up, you want to put it on top. But actually, the air gets to it from the bottom, and it does encourage the bottom to burn faster. They don't always do that, but you'll save more by putting them on the bottom by putting them on the top. Trust me. So if it doesn't burn smoothly, put it on the bottom. Now, there's a lot of people who, while they're smoking the cigar, try not to ash. And it does speak very well to the construction of the cigar. If the cigar will go a long time without ashing, it's a quality built cigar. It doesn't add much to the flavor, contrary to popular belief. It doesn't make much difference. If you're worried about dropping your ash on a carpet or something like that, certainly just ash it. The last thing I'm going to get into before I cut this off, because I want to keep it short, is when you're done with your cigar, please don't snuff it. It makes it smell terrible. Don't snuff it. When you're done with your cigar, lay it down and let it go out. It won't have a reeking smell. It'll be just fine. So just let it go out. If it, by the way, goes out while you're smoking it, there's nothing wrong in relighting it quickly. I do recommend that while you're lighting it, don't just puff in, blow out real gently. And that will actually encourage the embers to burn just gently for a second and then go ahead and draw in. And finally, when you're done with your cigars, I don't care where you are. If you don't hate the person you're smoking with, take your cigar out. There is nothing, I love cigars, I love the way they smell, but there is nothing stinkier than a cigar that's been laying around for 4 or 5 hours. It's the absolute worst. And if you have a half dozen of them, it can just stink up an entire room. So I put mine in a little tin, cover them, and then after a day I take them out and throw them out in the garbage. So don't leave them around your house. No point in making your house stinky, making enemies of your friends and your wife. And that really helps. So that's what I have for you today. Cut it, light it, enjoy it, and put it out properly. Have a good day.